welcome to another episode of Let's Make It. It's Monday night. It's 9 p.m. on the East Coast, and it's time for another Let's Make It. And we've been kind of wishy-washy a couple weeks because where we've been doing it. I actually recorded last week's show while I was traveling in my hotel room and put it out a little bit later in the week just because I didn't have time, and Bob and I couldn't connect during the week. We were going to try to do it later in the week, and we never could connect. So, but Bob is back here with me today. How's it going, Bob?
It's going good. How are you?
Doing good. How are things down in the warm area of the country?
Well, it's a little warmer, but it's also very rainy the last 24 hours, which is good for us. We need it.
Yeah, and pre-show, one of the things Bob's going to show you, he had a map of the weather, and I looked at that, and
Yep.
I lived in Texas for 5 years, and I know what that normally means, but fortunately it was past you today, so weather's not looking too bad right now.
It's not too bad right now. It did knock out the power early this morning, but it was early this morning, so it was all right.
Yep, it's always good to sleep in that way.
That's right.
All right, so this week you're going to show us what you did with your Screenly app and your other thing where you talked about, what I guess it's 2 weeks ago now that we talked about this.
Yeah, it's kind of the evolution of what we were working on before, and let me. This is the Raspberry Pi, and here you have a view of Dallas traffic. So what I did was I took the Screenly episode that you did on a Pi several months ago and put it on the Pi that I was working on a couple weeks ago with the ultrasonic sensor. And I have that sensor connected to the Pi, and I have Screenly running. And right now I'm just cycling through Dallas traffic, Dallas radar, and Let's Make It. So, which for me is 3 of my favorite sites. And I think it's going to be a little difficult to see, but I do have the light connected to the relay. And if you hear that clicking in the background, I have discovered that the Pi doesn't have quite enough oomph to power the HDMI connector along with the sensor and the relay. So when I move this to a box and actually use it somewhere, I'm going to have to power 5 volts from somewhere else. I won't be able to run 5 volts off the Pi. So this is kind of the evolution of the project, but it's all working, and it was actually very easy to get it all connected. Thankfully, when you install the Screenly image onto an SD card, it comes with SSH, so it's easy to copy onto the same code that I was using a couple weeks ago is running on here all the time now. So it's the evolution of the project, and it's actually been fairly easy, with the exception of I've discovered that I am not going to be able to use the VGA monitor that I had originally intended. I lose in the digital to analog conversion. I'm just losing too much resolution, and it's not going to work. So I'm going to have to dig up a monitor that's got an HDMI connection for the final version of this project. And tonight I was just using my second monitor connected to the Pi and a camera to show where I'm at with it right now.
So let me ask you a question. I noticed something whenever you're changing pages there. Does Screenly seem slow to you when it's loading a web page?
It is a little slow running off of the Pi.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It was static images that you upload to it. It works great. But when you're trying to do a page that it's any kind of delay in loading, it seems like it takes it a little bit longer.
It does take a little. Yeah, it does take a little while loading. And when I've looked at, I was watching the processor, and it is processing at nearly 100%. So it's just a matter of horsepower on the Pi. and even though Screenly is specifically designed for the Pi and is optimized for the Pi, it's still pushing the Pi's hardware quite a bit.
Yeah, when I first started testing, I wasn't sure if it was something I was doing on my network, but I noticed it on yours too, which makes me think it's more of the device itself that's not quite powerful enough.
Yeah, it just doesn't have enough oomph. But if it's a a page that doesn't have a lot of information on it, then it actually loads fairly quickly.
Right. It was the graphics that seemed like it took a while for it to download and to display.
That's right. And let's face it, I'm loading up, and I've got the monitor sitting right next to me. That's why I'm looking at it. It's loading up radar and traffic images, so there is a lot of data that's being updated every time it goes to a page. So
does that slow down your app at all for the sensor, or does it work just fine?
It doesn't make any difference.
Okay.
My sensor app uses so little horsepower, and actually spends the majority of its time doing nothing. So,
right. I just want to make sure that wasn't causing some kind of slowdown in the app itself.
No, not at all. And I've got it running in the background as root. So as soon as the Pi comes on, the sensor comes on, and it's. That has, Screenly is slow whether my sensor is running or not.
Great.
And the only thing I found is that the Pi just doesn't have enough oomph to support the sensor and the relay now that the HDMI is connected to it.
Right. So for the relay, are you running any kind of transistor in there as well, or not?
Not right now, no.
Yeah, so I mean that may solve your problem as well. Just use a transistor with another power source.
Yeah, and that's actually something I've looked at, is that I will use, what I'll end up doing is I'll use a separate power source, run the source through a transistor that I can turn on and off from the Pi.
Right, yeah.
And that way the Pi will have the ability to reboot or reset the components.
I had a similar problem because I did that on Airlight that reads how many viewers and all that at one time, using a Pi as well, and it being 3.3 volts and very low milliamp. I forget what it is, 320 or something like that. I had a hard time driving a relay, so I had to put a transistor in there, and that solved the whole problem when I did that.
Well, it's funny because if I run the Pi without any video output and use VNC or something to connect into it, run a VNC server on the Pi, then there's enough voltage left to run the relay and the sensor. But as soon as I put on either composite or HDMI video, there's just not enough oomph left on it.
You're just going over the edge. So you're close to the edges. It's probably good.
And this is right on the edge. And if you heard that clicking, it doesn't do it all the time. So it really is right on the edge of what the Pi can do. So, but in the final version, yes, I will use a transistor, and I'm going to have to use a outside 5-volt power supply and do a few other things. But in prototype, I've got everything working. Now I just need to find a monitor that I can use, and then put it in a box and connect it all up in a production setting.
All right, so we can have a little transition here. While you're doing that, though, I'm going to talk about a couple of other things real quick.
Okay.
Last week I did a show on the what is it? I forgot the name of it. That's how tired I am. The MicroPython, and I actually got something else with the same time I got the MicroPython. These are both from Kickstarter. I don't have a camera set up that I can actually use, I don't think, over my head. But this is a NavSpark, and this little thing is a Arduino-based GPS. It comes with the GPS antenna right here, but this is the actual board. So it's so I can read the model number without glasses. No, I can't. But it's basically it's a specialized Arduino IDE too. So you have to download the IDE from their site. They just have their own drivers and everything already installed in it. but tiny little thing. I haven't had a chance to plug it in yet. So, but right there is the connector for the antenna. It's a tiny little thing right there, and reset. So over the next couple weeks, I'm going to be playing with this a little bit more, and that's coming up in a few weeks. We'll talk about that. It's pretty neat though. It's something so small, is a GPS Arduino. And let's see. We'll let Bob tell me when he's ready. So the other thing Bob's been kind of working on, and Jim, who's in the chat room, has done this already, and they're going back and forth, is this TV out. And Bob got a laugh out of this because Jim says, "Do you remember the Rainbow Arduino woes? This is the TV out woes now." And I'm not sure Bob heard me.
I heard. Sorry, I had my mic turned off. Yeah, the Rainbow Arduino. Yes.
So that was he says this is the TV out woes.
Yes. Yeah, and that Rainbow Arduino is actually still sitting on my desk, staring at me. So I have never forgotten that one. I just haven't. I haven't. That's another one that I haven't. I've never have figured out how to get the I2C to work.
Yeah, and I still have two of those too, and I've never figured it out either. So they should contact us and help us out. We'll help them out.
What's really sad is I have contacted that company, and they weren't interested in helping.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm not real happy with them. So.
All right, so this next segment, we're going to talk about some a little different, not necessarily electronics, but we're talking about programming still. And we're going to talk about app development. And Bob's created an app on, I guess, for iPhone or iPhone and iPad?
iPhone, iPad, any variation. Actually, I've got Xcode. Sorry for all of this. I've got my Xcode up. Yeah, this is an app that I did. Essentially, it started off. It's called Testing Timer, and it's an app that its whole purpose in life is we've all been in school before, and we've all taken time tests, where you've got so many questions and so much time, and you've got to get the app done in a period of time. So this is an app that is specifically for that. So, but it's a development. It's something. Since I have a number of college age kids around, it was a useful app for them. So. And let's see.
So let me ask you this question. Do they allow you to use that during a test, or do you use it for preparing for the test?
I know people who have used it in a test, because it does turn the screensaver off. And if you leave the app, it will not, if you leave the app, it'll pause. So you must run it. There's no place in it to cheat. You can't load information in somewhere. Okay.
Yeah, I just didn't know if they trusted somebody to be using that, without.
So, but I've shown it to a few teachers. They like it. And there's been some ideas about where to take the app in the future, but it's a simple app where you put in the number of questions, you put in the time. It'll warn you with sound if you want it to, either the last 10% of the test or the last question. You can turn the sound on and off, and it gives you it tells you where you are in the test and how far you should go. Where you should be, what question you should be on, how much time you have left. If you leave the app or pause it, you get the big button that tells you to return. And when you're finished, it gives you a little summary of what you did, and asks if you want to do another test, or you can always click on support and send me hate mail. So desire.
So does it determine where you are on the questions based on where you should be based on the amount of time?
Yes.
Okay.
Based on the amount of time.
So there's no way they can tell what question they're on or when they get done with the question?
You can tell what question you're on.
Yeah, but what if something like I've taken tests where like the first 50 questions are multiple choice, and then you get into the essay at the end where you got, so the time it takes you to do one compared to the other is, a lot different.
I've talked to several teachers about that, and we've kind of prototyped that, but it's not out yet.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering, you just tap it when you're done with each question, it would tell you.
Right now, it's just a straight average of the questions that are available, and let me switch back to right now it's just a straight average of the questions that are, whatever number of questions and however much time, that's what it's calculating things at. But yeah, I have looked at doing a version where you can, if you have multiple choice, you set it for a certain period of time. If you have true false, you can set those with a different amount of time. You have an essay at the end, you can set a greater amount of time. And it's kind of, this is a project that's going to be driven by interest, user interest, how much people are using it. So, it is in the App Store right now. The reception has been fairly good. I mean, I have gotten a few, support emails back, and the feedback has been positive. And Apple also tells you, how many. It gives you access to the crash reports. When an app crashes on the phone, there's a report in the background that's sent back to Apple. And as the developer, I can see those crash reports. And amazingly, I've had no crash reports yet. So,
well, that's a good thing.
which is a really good thing that the app is working. So, and it's a nice, simple, easy to use app, and it is free in the App Store right now.
So you did this in entirely in Xcode and Objective-C, correct?
That's right.
All right. So because there are other options where you can do it across platforms. Essentia has an app. It has a framework you can do and compile it, and then there's Accelerator, which is probably the most popular one that I've seen used for cross-platform. And then basically they compile it using different compilers for different phones. And so you did it straight in Objective-C and Xcode.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And you have any plans to take it to Android at any time?
We are looking at it. My partner, my business partner, has actually talked to a couple developers who will essentially rewrite it.
Right.
For Android. And I've gotten a couple dozen requests for that, but not enough interest yet to really either pay a developer, pay an outside developer to rewrite it, or to rewrite it ourselves.
So what's the monetization method you're using for it, or are you just doing it completely free?
Right now, it is a free app, but I'm using the iAd framework from Apple.
Okay.
So on several of the screens, you have advertising, and when I was demoing this to, I used the Rocket team that one of our sons is a part of, and I showed them, and all with one exception, they unanimously said we would prefer advertising than to pay for the app. So that's the way I went.
Yeah, the iAds are pretty small at the bottom. They don't generally interfere with much.
That's right. And to integrate them into the iAd into the app was was very easy. So, and if there's an interest in it, I may have a version where I take the ads out and charge 99 cents or $1.99 or something. But right now it's a app that where people request things is where we go with it.
Right. So, kind of on the heels of this, do we want to talk about a little bit about the new language that Apple released?
Sure. Yeah, I do have the new Xcode downloaded. I do not have the beta of iOS 8 installed on anything.
Oh, I have iOS 8. I actually use a iPod Touch to do that kind of stuff. So I don't want to use my phone for that because I use my phone too much and I trust it. I need to trust it to work.
Right.
But I've also downloaded the new OS X as well, and I stuck it on a Mac Mini. So I'm going to be playing with it, kind of see there.
Okay.
But the new Swift language that Apple announced, a new language, and it really reminds you a lot of a scripting language, like JavaScript, for example. So it took the best of a bunch of different things and put it together.
Yeah, when I was watching the very first introductory video from Apple, I very much had JavaScript was the first thing that came to mind. Is they took several things out of JavaScript, and it does seem to be the evolution of Xcode and Objective C.
They took things out of a bunch of languages and put them together into one language. So they took the best of a bunch of things. Like JavaScript is typeless, where this is not typeless, but it's what do they call it? Inferred. So it tries to figure out what you're trying to do. So you don't have to define something. Although it's probably better if you do define something, if it can be either thing. So
yeah, you have fewer definitions, and there are a few places where it looks like they've done they've borrowed some things from Ruby and JavaScript
and Python
and
Objective C
and several other languages, and I do like the getting rid of semicolons. That has been I have forgotten more semicolons over the years than I can possibly count. So
yeah, but I'm so used to it now. I was writing stuff in Swift. I was putting semicolons at the end of it.
Yeah, but
it's gonna take me a while to get past that now.
Yeah, the compiler doesn't care. You can put it on there if you like, and but there are a few places where you do have to put in a semicolon to get the compiler to understand.
Correct. That's correct. But it's not like every line needs to be terminated with a semicolon.
Right. That's right. You don't have to have every line, and it is nice. In one sense, I do like it, and some of the shorthand it does. Yeah, as somebody who just wrote an app that's in Objective C, and I I will be updating it for iOS 8. So some of it is going to be written in Swift, although a lot of it I'm just going to leave as the Objective C that it's written in right now.
Well, yeah, I haven't tried combining the two, but supposedly it's totally transparent.
Right.
That's actually I have 3 weeks of a shows recorded. The first show's already out with Swift, and I've already recorded 3 weeks of it, and then getting ready to start recording the fourth week this week sometime. So I'm a little bit ahead of myself, but that's generally like to do that, so I can kind of figure it out ahead of time. But so far, I'm actually liking it. I mean, Objective C is complicated to figure out, but after you figure it out, it's not too bad. And Swift's kind of the same way. They use some of the weird typing, what I call weird typing. If you're an Objective-C programmer, it seems normal to you probably. The way they define their classes and everything is very much similar in Swift.
Yeah, it is the evolution of Objective-C. It's not a revolutionary language. It is the evolution. But you're right, they've done some very nice things with it. They've taken out some things that that are redundant, like semicolons, and I do like, and I've heard it pronounced both tuples and tuples, depending on. I do like that.
Right, and that comes from Python, I believe. Python has them. I assume it comes from Python.
Yeah, that is something that I could have used in this app. I could have used that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't think I'm going to go rewriting all my code to use it. What I ended up doing was creating an object, and I passed that object around from one controller to the next, where I could have used tuples or tuples, however it's correctly pronounced. I could have used those, but I used what I had available to me.
So if you had a chance to play with the playground, what do they call it, the playground? What's the app where you can write? It's called Playground, right?
I have not played with it. I've got Xcode 6 downloaded. I've got an iOS 8 beta downloaded, but I don't have it installed on anything. So I think you're a little ahead of me.
It's called a Playground. Yeah, I couldn't think of it. It didn't sound right when I said it, but it is called a Playground. That's very neat because you can, as you code, it shows you on the screen what your values are equaling. I've never seen that like that before. That's a very neat way to write some code and play with it.
And that is actually which IDE was it? There was I just forgot the name of it. There was a Java IDE that I used 10 years ago that as you wrote code, the IDE would show you the values.
Really? That's neat.
So,
I'd never seen anything done quite like, I mean, I've seen things where you put breaks in it or you can do watches and stuff, but never have it real time on the right-hand side give you what you just did.
Yeah, I've seen that before, and it's a very nice feature. So,
far I've been using that for the shows. At some point, I'm going to have to jump completely to Xcode coming up here really soon because you can't do a whole lot in the playground. There's some limitation to it, but it's a great way to learn and to play with things and experiment with stuff.
Yeah, that's right. So, but as somebody who's developing apps, it is going to make life easier for app developers.
Yeah,
at least for the devices that are on Apple, and that's quite. Before the show, we were talking about I have mixed feelings about it. So as an Apple developer, I really like it because it gives me more power with less coding. And if anybody who writes code, that's a great thing to have. As someone who's looking at moving their apps to other devices besides Apple, it becomes even more difficult to port it somewhere else. So short of rewriting your code in multiple languages.
right. Or using something like Accelerator that converts it for you.
Yeah, and I think this is going to make that process more difficult. So
yeah, I mean, I think kind of what they were shooting for was if you look how easy it is to develop for Android using Java, then you go to look at Xcode with Objective-C. Objective-C is a lot more complicated to learn than what it is to learn Java. I think they're trying to get more people that know the scripting, other scripting languages into the Apple ecosystem.
Yes. And once they've got you, once you're in that system, they want to keep you there, obviously. Right. And if I were Apple, I'd want to do the same thing. I don't blame them in the least for making it easy to write code for Apple devices and more difficult for other devices. If I were at Apple, I'd do the same thing. So
yeah, exactly. But I think it's been a long time coming. It's because Objective-C's been around for a long time. I know it's been changing over time, but it was developed back in the 80s, and for the most part, it's still the same.
Well, and it's all it's got its the genesis of it is in regular C, and regular C's been around as long as I can remember, late 70s, mid 70s,
right?
Longer than I've been coding. So, and there are some things that that they've had to carry along for compatibility, and this one does break the C model completely.
Right. Yeah, it definitely does.
So at least before, you could write a straight C program in Xcode and it would work.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's how you actually developed it in there for using things on the Mac. You can do console apps real easily. Just pretty much take anything you can get that compiles with GCC and it'll compile just fine with Xcode.
That's right. But not anymore.
Nope.
But that's the movement of a modern language.
Yeah.
But it's funny. C, here we are, 40 years after whatever C was originally created, and we're still using it.
Right. And it's used a lot. I mean, they've adapted it, C# and, different types of C language. C++ came out a little later. So, it's been adapted through time, but it's still used, pretty regularly.
Yeah. There are some very good compilers out there. GCC, you really can't go wrong there. For something that you've got a low level, dealing with the operating system at a low level, it's a great compiler. So
right. All right. Well, do you have anything else for this week?
That is it for this week.
All right. Well, go ahead.
Have the app and evolution of my Pi and its sensor.
Yep. All right. Well, I just want to remind everybody that you can always watch us on YouTube, and you can download us on most of the podcast directories. If you find one where we're not, please let us know, and we'll make sure that we get there. But you either use iTunes or Dogcatcher or any of those, you can get our shows on there. You can also watch us live on your big TV while you get downloading a Roku app. In the Roku, just search for TechZen TV, and you'll find us live right there on your big TV. Not the little computer screen or anything like that. So you get us all right there. And I definitely appreciate everybody telling your friends about us, because we've been growing. And even with our weird schedule last month and a half, we're still growing like crazy. And definitely appreciate everybody telling your friends or sharing our shows on YouTube or whatever. It's great that people are helping us out and getting the word out. I think that's it for us this week. And we'll see everybody next week.
All right. Have a good evening.
See ya. For show notes for this show, contacts, and more, go to the techzen.tv website, where you can get show notes for all of our shows. We love to hear from our viewers and listeners. We have an email, a Twitter, and a phone number where you can contact us for each show. For details, visit the techzen.tv website and get the show details. You can also make a video and upload it somewhere like YouTube or Vimeo, and then just send us a link. You never know, you may see your video in a future show. You can get all of our shows delivered automatically to your favorite device by going to your favorite podcast website like iTunes and subscribing. Each of our shows also has a YouTube channel you can subscribe to get regular updates. Our shows are also available on most internet radio networks like Stitcher and TuneIn Radio. You can also watch and listen to our shows on Xbox, TiVo, and Roku. You can even find us on your Zune.